My name is Ronnie Green. I have the pleasure of serving the University of Nebraska-Lincoln as the Chancellor. And again, welcome to our beautiful Innovation Campus facility here in Lincoln. We're very pleased today to have with us Clayton Yeutter, who you will hear from in a moment, here just to my right. Dr. Yeutter, as you know, has been an instrumental leader in agriculture, in trade, in politics in the U.S. and around the world for the majority of his lifetime. We're very, very proud of Dr. Yeutter, that he's a native Nebraskan from Eustis, Nebraska, in the west central part of our state, where he grew up on a family farming operation that he later managed in his life there in the Eustis area. Is a graduate of the University of Nebraska with both PhD and JD degrees, and was on our faculty here early in his career before launching his political career that led to him being Secretary of Agriculture for the United States, U.S. Trade Representative, as well as counsel in the cabinet to President Bush 1. So Clayton had this vision several years ago now of having an international trade and finance institute anchored here at his alma mater at the University of Nebraska. And we've been very pleased that over the course of a little more than the last year that we've been able to raise significant funding in excess of $8 million to endow this program in 3 endowed chairs in our College of Business Administration, our College of Law, and our College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources. So Clayton, it's a pleasure to have you on our campus back with us. He's been here with us since Friday in a series of events celebrating the raising of those funds for the university. It's my pleasure now to welcome our current governor of the great state of Nebraska, Governor Pete Ricketts. I was kidding Pete when we walked in a few minutes ago because he's already had a quite busy day. He started in St. Louis this morning addressing the Midwest Governors Forum with Japan, where our visitors from Japan have been engaged these last several days. So please join me in welcoming Governor Pete Ricketts.
Well, thank you very much, Chancellor. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here, and thank you very much, Secretary Yeutter, and of course, Chairman Ishige-san. Thank you very much for being here as well from JETRO. And indeed, the Chancellor is correct. I just got back today from that U.S. Midwest Japan Association Conference down in St. Louis. It was the 48th annual conference, and it is alternated between being here in the United States and also in Japan. So last year, when I led my trade mission to Japan, I was at that conference in Tokyo, and then we met with a variety of Japanese companies, and then also went over to China. Last year, I also led a trade mission to Europe, where we met with a variety of officials, including EU officials, talking about non-tariff trade barriers. And it's great that you're all here to talk about the importance of trade, especially when we look at some of the news or some of the coverage that's coming from the presidential campaigns, and we see our presidential candidates tend not to be so keen on trade. And it's important that we remember the actual benefits that trade does bring to the state of Nebraska and our country in general. Trade is an important part of how we create value and create opportunities for our producers and our manufacturers and all companies here in Nebraska. We want to open up those markets. 95 or 96% of the world's consumers lie outside our borders. We have to go out there and get them. If we're relying just on our internal consumers, we're limiting our markets. And so we want to go out and establish relationships. And that is, of course, the goal of the U.S. Midwest and Japan Association. It's the Midwestern states that get together with Japan and talk about how we can work more collaboratively together to establish mutual prosperity and security. And let's take Japan in particular, since we have the folks from Japan that are here today, they're going to talk to us a little bit about it. Because Japan is an important international partner for us. Japan is our 3rd largest trading partner after Canada and Mexico. And in 2015, we shipped about $800 million worth of merchandise to Japan. And that number over the recent years has doubled. And so that's, again, an example of how we can open up markets for our folks here in the state. But it goes beyond that as well. Japan is the largest foreign direct investor in Nebraska. Since 2010, Japanese companies have invested $4.4 billion in Nebraska, helping to create thousands of jobs. And Japanese companies have been associated with Nebraska for decades. We have 35 Japanese-owned companies, and one of them, Kawasaki, just celebrated their 40th anniversary. Kawasaki employs about 2,000 people here in Lincoln. They've been producing rail cars for New York and Washington, D.C., and in fact, have just got another contract with the Metro North Long Island Railway to build another 92 rail cars. That contract has the opportunity to go up to 584 rail cars, and if it does that, that would be $1.8 billion additional, and an expansion of 200 more jobs on top of the 2,000 we already have here. That kind of investment helps create jobs here at home. And it's not just Kawasaki. Because of Kawasaki's expansion, another Japanese company, Moryo Denki, through its subsidiary Moryo USA, is also expanding here in Lincoln. We've also seen a company called Geist, which is another Japanese company, expand here as well. All three of those companies we met with when I was in Japan last year. So it's important to continue to develop these relationships, to let them know that Nebraska is open for business. We want their investment, and that they will find here in our state the single greatest resource anybody could ever want, and that's our people. I know from personal experience, when you hire a Nebraskan, you get somebody who's well-educated, who's got a great work ethic, who's loyal, who's customer service-oriented, and will help that company succeed. And so by continuing to develop those relationships with the other Japanese companies that have made investments here, like Marubeni, Itochu, NTT, CUPE, we can expand jobs here in Nebraska. And that's why it's important that we continue to look for those opportunities, not only by developing relationships such as the conference I just got back from, by going on trade missions. And actually, we will have the opportunity in 2 years' time to host the U.S. Midwest Japan Association Conference. It'll be the 50th anniversary, so it's going to be a big deal, and we're going to have it right here in Nebraska. But we also want to look to open up more of those trade opportunities. One of those opportunities that we have before us right now is TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That involves Pacific Rim nations in the United States opening up trade barriers, bringing down tariffs. For example, on our beef right now in Japan, there's a 38% tariff. TPP would take that down to 9%. That would offset some of the strength that we're seeing right now in the dollar. Other countries in that Pacific Rim will take their tariffs down to 0. So these are opportunities to make our producers here at home more competitive in markets overseas, to expand what they can do. I don't know whose notes those were, but I'm going to have to pick those up, I suppose. But that's the opportunity we have. And think about this. If we don't sign TPP, China will and is right now going out and negotiating trade partnerships. Do you think when they negotiate those trade agreements, they will put protections for labor in there, or intellectual property, or the environment, all of which is in TPP? And of course the answer is no. They won't do that. They will structure trade agreements that benefit them. They will step into that vacuum that we create if we don't sign TPP. And that's why these agreements are so important. Because not only do they create opportunities for our producers here at home, but they enhance the security and the interests of the United States and our allied nations around the world. If we don't show leadership, somebody else will step up and do that. So, I'm glad you're all here to talk about these important issues, because with the presidential race, we do have a lot to talk about when it comes to trade and how it benefits our state and the expansion opportunities we have. I'm looking forward to hearing some of the remarks from Secretary Yeutter, and I look forward to continuing to work to grow our state by expanding our trade opportunities. Thank you all very much, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much, Governor. I was just kind of panning the audience for the benefit of our friends from JETRO who are with us today. It's very good to see all of you here. We very much appreciate you being here as part of this discussion today. I see our Director of Agriculture for the state of Nebraska, Greg Ibaugh, our Director of Economic Development, Courtney Dentlinger, is with us, Secretary of State John Gale, I saw somewhere a few minutes right here. So a number of our state senators are also with us, Senator Brosh, Senator Watermeyer. So we appreciate our government leaders being here with us today, as well as a number of business leaders from across the state who have joined us as well. So thank you very much for being with us. It's now my pleasure to introduce the man I talked about a little bit earlier, our own Dr. Clayton Yeutter. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Yeutter.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Green, and it's a pleasure to be back in Nebraska for a few days and see all of you. This is still my favorite place in the entire world, so I'm glad to be here, and I'm so glad to have a chance to introduce my longtime friend, Ishige-san, in just a few minutes. Governor Ricketts, I'm really glad to see you here, and glad to see you be so involved in trade kinds of issues. I say amen to everything you had to say about trade in your presentation just now. I'm not going to repeat any of that because I don't have to. He is right on target. And when it comes to TPP, which is the issue that's really on everybody's minds right now, thanks to the thanks or no thanks maybe to the presidential campaign, he's absolutely correct. You know, if we do not have the wisdom to sign TPP, we will have turned economic leadership, including trade leadership in Asia, totally over to China. We will have lost our leadership capabilities in Asia, and it may take decades to get them back, if we ever get them back. The attitude that is being expressed by our presidential candidates on this subject is just wrong. When you have a free trade agreement like TPP, there is a great advantage to those who are on the inside versus those who are on the outside. And in this case, we got 12 countries on the inside, and they'll have advantages over everybody else, including and especially China. It's just like NAFTA. NAFTA is 3 countries which have now created a North American market, and these 3 countries are on the inside and have been for the last 20 years or so. Everybody else has been on the outside, and NAFTA has been an enormous success story. Probably it's just astounding to me that presidential candidates want to renegotiate NAFTA, which is probably the most successful trade agreement in the history of the world. I mean, when you quadruple trade between and among 3 countries and put those 3 countries in a position where they have competitive advantages over all the rest of the world, and you say, I don't like NAFTA, I want to renegotiate it, the follow-up question has to be, why? Pray tell, why? But enough of that. No further speech making on that score. I just encourage the governor to continue to be involved. As you well know, Governor, we're in an integrated world. That is not going to change. That frightens some people, as you well know, and that's why we hear about it in presidential campaigns. But the fact is, it's reality. And in addition to all the good things you're doing on trade, you know, we have to prepare our young people well for operating in that world and having good jobs in that world that will carry them forward into good futures. And we have to build the groundwork for boosting international trade in agriculture and everything else in Nebraska in the future. That's what we're trying to do in the Yeutter Institute, which is just getting off the ground, and hopefully that will complement everything you're doing, Governor, to advance the cause of international trade. Now I want to introduce Ishige-san, a longtime friend. As most of you know, the trade ministry in Japan is METI. It used to be called MITI, and most people probably know it better from MITI than METI. but it's the trade ministry. It's equivalent to the USTR, which I ran in the U.S. government, but with a lot more. It's sort of USTR, the Commerce Department, maybe some of the Transportation Department, and a bunch of other things. METI is a big, big ministry in the Japanese government. I think most people would say that much of the Japanese government, maybe most of the Japanese government, is run by either METI or the Ministry of Finance, one of the two. Those are the two powerhouse ministries in Japan. And our guest here today, Ishige-san, came up through the ranks of METI and ultimately became vice chancellor, or rather vice minister. He got a lot of trade experience on the way. In fact, some of that he got as a very young staffer in METI when I was giving Japan a very hard time during my tenure as U.S. trade representative. But he lived through that. At one point, he went off to Geneva, which was probably to get away from me, and spent some time in the GATT operations in Geneva. But he learned a lot about trade policy along the way, and as I indicated, rose all the way to vice minister status, which is as high as you can go in the Japanese government. And so he was ready to step down from his governmental functions at a pretty young age. And what happens then is the Japanese government does a very nice job of moving those folks off into prominent positions, either in the private sector or quasi-private. And as a result of that, Ishige-san ended up as the CEO of JETRO, the Japan External Trade Organization. That's a wonderful organization with whom I've worked for a long time. We have the representatives of JETRO Chicago here, the folks that I worked with during my tenure at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. JETRO does a magnificent job of advancing the cause of trade both directions. I mean, their job is to expand Japanese exports into the U.S. and U.S. exports into Japan, and they do a great, great job of it. And I want to digress for just a minute, Governor, to pick up a point that you made earlier about all the Japanese investment in the U.S. You're too young, Governor, but let me tell you a story that goes all the way back to when Kawasaki established its plant here in Lincoln. The surprise for Kawasaki at that time, you can use this in speeches from now on, Governor Ricketts. The surprise was they looked at the productivity of that plant after something like 6 months, and they were shocked to discover it was as high or higher than any of their plants in Japan. That's representative of the work ethic of employees here in Nebraska, and that's something you can sell to the world, Governor. But without any further digressions, I want to present to you an outstanding Japanese civil servant and an outstanding CEO of JETRO, Ishige-san.
Governor Ricketts, Ambassador Yeutter, Chancellor Green, and ladies and gentlemen, too much kind words. Overwhelmed myself. Thank you very much for coming today. I am Hiroyuki Ishige, Chairman and CEO of JETRO. Mr. Yeutter, I would like to express my appreciation for your kind introduction for the bottom of my heart. It is truly an honor for me to be able to give a speech in such a prestigious academic venue on this occasion. As this slide shows, Mr. Yeutter is my mentor in the field of international trade policy. He is also an old and important friend of mine. This slide shows I was suffering from serious jet lag. Today is the same, but I will do my best. As chairman of JETRO, I have the honor of speaking once a year at the CSIS, a think tank in Washington. I present on the topic of Asia-Pacific economic integration and the roles of the US and Japan. Every year before I speak, I meet with Ambassador Yeutter to catch up. And he kindly gives me advice before my speech. He is one of the world's preeminent professionals in this field, as well as an opinion leader. His guidance is therefore indispensable for me. When I was offered this opportunity to pay him back for his kindness, I readily accepted. Luckily, the Japan Midwest US Annual Joint Meeting was held nearby in St. Louis, Missouri, as the governor said. Actually, in the yesterday's conference, I moderated a session titled "The Partnership Toward the Future." So from St. Louis, Missouri to Lincoln, Nebraska, I have come to the future state and promising state of Nebraska. By the way, Governor Rickett gave a wonderful speech in the plenary session yesterday. It was the best speech among the speeches given by powerful competitors from Midwest states. And now, I'm able to be here in Lincoln in celebration of my friend Ambassador Yeutter. Congratulations on the establishment of the Clayton K. Yeutter Institute of International Trade and Finance. Ambassador Yeutter was a tough negotiator as a USTR, probably the toughest and the most capable negotiator among USTRs. I know many USTRs, but I believe he is the toughest and most capable negotiator. I know this because he served during the height of trade friction between the US and Japan. At the same time, he always reminded the US industries that, I quote, "understanding overseas market and marketing are essential," end of quote. Without knowing markets, success in overseas business is impossible. His sincere sentiment regarding the importance of international business education has always been clear. And now, this sentiment has evolved and borne fruit in the form of this institute. Throughout our office in Chicago, we at JETRO will work together with the institute and contribute as much as we can to its success. With that, I would like to go into my main topic today, progress of Asia-Pacific economic integration and the roles of the US and Japan. The US presidential election has heated up. The topic of free trade has become something of unpopular one. However, I would like to explain how it is important for the US, Nebraska, and Japan, as I'm gathering all my courage to speak on this topic. Please go easy on me during the question and answer. No tough question is accepted. No tough question is allowed. Please remember that. We are very concerned about the strong backlash against the free trade during this election period in the United States. I can imagine that some Americans see free trade along the following lines. It leads to lost jobs. It allows foreign products to penetrate the US market and weaken domestic industries. Or it expands disparities, various unpopular things. But ever since the worldwide disorder left in the wake of World War II, what do you think has been bolstering prosperity in the global economy? While I believe there are many factors, one which played a significant role was free trade. Expansion of trade has achieved the following: creating high-wage jobs, promoting production of innovative and reasonably priced products and services, enabling countries to focus on fostering the respective industries of specialty, and finally, improving global productivity. One factor is the progress of technology in the field of telecommunication and transportation. It's clear. Another is the integration of trade rules and promotion of liberalization, centering on the World Trade Organization and its predecessor, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT. Today, I would like to focus on the latter in terms of international trade rules. The integration of trade rules after the war was promoted first under GATT, then since 1995, the WTO. The focal point in the 20th century was the elimination of tariff walls. In other words, to allow producers around the world to sell and buy their products more freely across borders. The fundamental principle is that each WTO member country has to deal with all other member countries in an equal manner. It is called MFN treatment and national treatment in trade policy jargon. Non-WTO member countries are not able to benefit from this. This gave the WTO a gravity which eventually drew in two major economies, China in 2001, Russia in 2012. As economic relations grow, an expansion occurs not only in the trade of products, there is also an expansion of mutual investment and exchange of intangible property such as data. In addition to lowering tariff walls, more rules have come to be sought within the WTO in line with various forms of economic activity. During the time, however, developing countries have also been growing more self-reliant and began asserting their presence. They have strongly opposed this rapid integration of trade rules because they want to cultivate their own industries. When deciding trade rules in the WTO, each member country gets an equal vote, and opposition by developing countries has effectively stalled the WTO's role creating of new rules since the beginning of the 2000s. With the current deadlock in liberalization, there is one hope in the world for a breakthrough. I'm speaking of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, of which the US and Japan have both played leading roles. The first historical significance of the TPP lies in its size, of course. As its name implies, it is a free trade agreement comprised of 12 Pacific Rim countries. And these 12 countries will create more advanced and liberalized rules than the WTO. The GDPs of the 12 countries combined comes to $20 trillion, or approximately 40% of the world GDP. Their populations combined forms a market of 800 million people. In addition, its members include a number of countries from Asia expected to achieve remarkable economic growth. This growth potential is itself another great advantage of the TPP. Nebraska can also expect benefits from the TPP. 48% of all products exported from Nebraska in 2014 were toward TPP member countries. This trade has supported 109,000 jobs in Nebraska. That's significant number. Reduced tariffs and integrated rules through the TPP would expand these economic effects. The following are some examples of how Nebraska will benefit from the elimination or reduction of tariffs. A 20% tariff is now imposed on export of egg yolks to Japan. The tariff will be removed within 6 years after implementation of the TPP. Egg yolks may not be a big deal How about beef? One of the major agricultural products of Nebraska. As Governor Ricketts said, significant tariff reduction has been agreed upon, 38.5% to 9%. This is remarkable. If the implementation of the TPP fails, U.S. beef export to Japan would be outdone by strong competitors like Australia. By the way, Australia and Japan has already implemented their FTA. Australian beef export will enjoy the Japanese market with significantly reduced tariffs. I will discuss more this issue relating to the ratification of the TPP. As for the Vietnam, prefabricated housing and beef are also currently given a 20% tariff when exported to Vietnam. This will be eliminated within 4 years for housing parts and within 3 years for beef. I would also like to explain 2 more reasons why the TPP is significant. The second significance is that TPP is the 21st century FTA. It contains rules for new fields, including labor, environment, and climate change. Leveling the playing field is a phrase often used by the US government. The TPP raised the level of standards and rules in developing countries to those of industrialized countries. Accordingly, developed countries like the United States and Japan will be able to compete under fairer rules. The third significance of the TPP is that it includes small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs, under the coverage of trade liberalization. In both the US and Japan, SMEs account for over 90% of all companies. By the way, do you know the definition of SMEs in the US? Do you know the definition of the SMEs in the US? Nobody? Mr. Kimura, you are expert of the US policy. 500. 500 employees. How about Japan? Correct. How about China? 3,000. No. 3,000. Ah, yes, you are correct. Your memory is always correct. He is young. The Chinese definition of SME, very, very different from that, from those of Japan and US. Their inclusion means the SME's inclusion means a much broader range of people will enjoy the benefits of free trade. These advantages offered by the TPP have already drawn the interest of non-member countries in Asia. The TPP negotiations reached an agreement last October. Since then, a number of countries and regions within Asia have expressed interest in being candidates for future participation. These are South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, the Philippines, and Indonesia. Furthermore, China has also shown keen interest in this agreement. Among these non-member countries are some which are lacking the standards required by the TPP. For example, there still remain the following issues: restrictions on investment from foreign companies, inadequate protection of the environment and labor, and monopolization by state companies. In order for these countries to join the TPP, they have to overcome numerous challenges. This may include constitutional changes, as might be required in the case of the Philippines. Why are they so eager to join the TPP? It is because the returns make the efforts worth it. It is universal that transparent rules are favorable for business. Every country in the Asia Pacific is looking ahead toward the future of the TPP and hoping not to miss the bus. This is a sentiment shared by them. A little bit, quick, too quick, Kimura-san. Incidentally, when I was decided that I would be speaking here at the Yeutter Institute, my attention fell on Nebraska. I recalled a dramatic scene of a touchdown made by a young boy. This took place at the University of Nebraska, and the boy, wearing the number 22, ran 69 yards in front of a stadium of 60,000. That's right, he was the 7-year-old cancer patient, Jack Hoffman. His touchdown was featured in the Japanese media and moved many people, including myself. In contrast to this, the TPP has not yet scored a touchdown. Although it has, until now, played a leading role in the TPP, the US is now under threat of losing its chance to reap its benefit. Exhaustive efforts went into realizing this trade framework. Japan itself spent a great amount of political capital. That was really a tough decision for Japan. Ambassador Yeutter knows how difficult it is for Japan to participate in the TPP. It is not only for economic purpose, but also for strategic purpose. Recently, Prime Minister Abe, Shinzo Abe, emphasized the early ratification of the TPP in the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit held at Vientiane in Laos. Should we postpone everything now due to political concerns in the United States? I understand that Jack underwent brain surgery twice and endured chemotherapy for a year. His parents thanked God for granting him the power to be able to run those long 69 years. I think that we too still have the ability to score a touchdown. Why should we give up now? Please speak up. What I would like to emphasize is that the process of ratifying the TPP is the minimum responsibility of member countries. Of course, it will not be an easy task to unite individual interest groups because of their diverse perspectives. However, each member country is required to make the following 3 efforts. First, it is necessary to make it known how much economic benefit the TPP can bring. Second, it is essential to provide a support structure for those groups that may be disadvantaged by the TPP. Third, both the public and private sectors have to examine a way to distribute benefits of trade, not only to capitalists or employers, but also to workers and employees. I believe that such inclusive activities must be conducted so that no one is left behind. TPP's benefit is not for capitalists only. This should be also for workers. Now, please allow me to talk about our organization, JETRO. Following the agreement on the TPP, we have conducted the following support for SMEs. This is the JETRO's groundwork for contributing to the ratification of the TPP bill. We have established TPP consultation desks at 46 JETRO offices in Japan. There, we work closely together with Japanese SMEs to help them create overseas business plan. Further, in the last fiscal year, We have held TPP seminars 88 times throughout Japan, 12 times overseas, totally 100 times geared toward SMEs. We will hold an additional 150 seminars this fiscal year. In order for SMEs to maximize the merits of the TPP, comprehensive support is essential from product development to marketing. Accordingly, JETRO coordinates local support organizations such as banks, industry groups, and chambers of commerce and industry. We are coordinating almost 1,000 organizations. We are also in the process of dispatching 400 experts in support of 4,000 Japanese SMEs over the next 2 years. Why? For what purpose? Most of Japanese SMEs have cutting-edge technologies and are interested in foreign markets, overseas business. However, they are lacking in human resources and experience. This system will supplement their capabilities. After the TPP goes into force, it will be a stepping stone for expanding trade liberalization in the Asia-Pacific. The TPP is a groundbreaking framework that includes rules for new fields. However, it does not cover all crucial issues comprehensively. For instance, it does not yet have sufficient rules related to electronic commerce. This is quite important area. Alibaba, Chinese e-commerce company, has more than 600 million customers in China and will enter the ASEAN market with 600 million consumers. And there are no defined rules related to mutual recognition standards and certification. This is also one of the areas China attaches great importance. Nevertheless, the TPP is expected to continually evolve as is implied when it is referred to as living agreement. Rules will be updated in line with the development of technology. Under the TPP, swift change will be possible. Why it is so important to ratify now? Some say it could be ratified in the future. I don't agree with this idea. I think there are 2 points to consider. One, if the US Congress does not ratify the TPP during the lame duck session, it may be postponed for the next 2 or 3 years. Two, China's influence in Asia will grow during that time. As President Obama has emphasized, this may allow China to write new trade rules to its own benefits. This has been referred this was referred by Ambassador Yeutter and Governor Rickett. Would that be acceptable? In addition to the TPP, there is another framework for region-wide free trade called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP. This framework is currently under negotiation in Asia and seeing progress. Compared to the TPP, RCEP does not cover such a wide range of fields, nor is its target standard as high. However, in terms of GDP, population, and the potential future growth of member countries, RCEP is comparable to the TPP. One important point where the 2 frameworks differ is in terms of their membership. The TPP includes the world's first and third economic powers, the US and Japan, but it does not include the major emerging countries like China and India. Among ASEAN countries, some are TPP members, whereas others are not. On the other hand, all the ASEAN members, China, India, Australia, New Zealand, Korea, and Japan, participate in RCEP, while the US does not. Some observers see China focusing the efforts on RCEP in order to compete with the TPP led by the United States. If the TPP comes to a standstill while RCEP proceeds, the unifying force of the TPP may transfer to RCEP. Even a new order may then arise in the Asia Pacific. Why the pivot to Asia? That is a question. The TPP has achieved a high level of liberalization and unification rules because the US and Japan, which share common values, have joined hands in taking its leadership. Again, I would like to ask the people in the United States. In order to further enhance trade and investment in the Asia Pacific and between the US and Japan, is there a plan B outside of the TPP? Is there a plan B outside of the TPP? I feel it is exactly because of this politically important time that we must avoid becoming short-sighted. And I think we are all required to do what we can toward the TPP's early ratification. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Ishige-san, for that thoughtful presentation, especially the emphasis on all of the discussion about TPP at the moment. We now have some opportunity for conversation with our guest, as well as with Dr. Yeutter in the form of Q&A and dialogue. So if there are questions that you might have, I would invite you. There are mics, roving mics on the floor, just to raise your hand, and we'll address the question to our speaker and to Dr. Yeutter. While you're waiting on your first question, I would draw your attention to the fact that in the reception that follows, immediately following our close here in the room above us, there is a copy of the chairman's presentation that you can take with you if you would like. And I think the JETRO colleagues would also appreciate you filling out an evaluation form for their use as well. So who might have the first question for Chairman Ishige-san or Dr. Yeutter? All the way up in the back.
I was wondering if we could get your views on pressures in Congress to, quote, fix or correct or modify certain provisions of the TPP and what impact that might have on ratification of the TPP in other countries. Just to give a concrete example, but there may well be very many others, some concerns by certain members of Congress that protection of biologic drugs, the protection period will be reduced from what is currently given in the U.S., or at least it won't be as lengthy in other countries as it currently is in the U.S. If such a change were necessary to get passage of Congress, is it worth it, or would any fix or corrections throw off ratification or support in other countries such as Japan?
I think Dr. Yeutter has a comment first, and then we'll pass to the chairman.
I probably should take that one since that's American politics at work, so I'll happily do so. You've asked a really key question in terms of TPP approval. And by the way, I agree with Chairman Ishige-san that the best possible scenario here is to approve TPP right now and not let it go for 2 or 3 years. But today, the votes are simply not there in the U.S. Congress. Speaker Ryan indicated that in public comments just a few days ago, and I think he's correct. They're not there. And part of the reason is because of the controversy over biologics, where the U.S. is simply not satisfied with the protections that are given in TPP. Now, some people say you cannot renegotiate any part of TPP because that will extend it out, and that is a problem. But if you don't have the votes, you better try. The risk is of reopening the entire agreement, which could, make folks negotiate for another 5 years. But I don't think that's true. We've renegotiated specific provisions on some of the other free trade agreements that have been passed in the last few years, and I think that could be done on biologics here, and that would probably handle the issue. There are some concerns on tobacco issues, which I won't explain here today, but I don't think those are nearly as significant in terms of vote totals as the biologics issue. We'll have to wait and see whether the administration, which is working it hard, can get the votes without changing biologics, which is their preference, or whether they're going to have to say, sorry folks, we can't do this without biologics. And while I have the mic, maybe I should add one further point. I'm sorry to monopolize here, Chancellor Green. But in terms of timing, if they can't make it during the present Congress or the present legislative session, the question is whether it can be done in the lame duck session. And I don't know whether you can change biologics in the lame duck or not. There's not much time because the lame duck is after the election and before Christmas. There's not a whole lot of time in there, and people want to celebrate Thanksgiving and they want to do Christmas shopping. So it's hard to get a lot done in the Congress in that period. The advantage of doing that, which Governor Ricketts and I were talking about earlier, is that if you could do it in the lame duck session, one of the arguments at that time, particularly if Mrs. Clinton were to be the winner, is, but it really would apply to Mr. Trump as well, is, let's get rid of this issue and let the new administration kind of start over on with a blank state situation moving forward. In other words, let's clean up the act, get rid of TPP as an issue by passing it, and then move on to other things. That's the argument that can be made in TPP. Whether it'll change enough votes to get it passed is another matter.
Okay. Anything you would like to add, Chairman?
Can I say in Japanese?
Yes, please.
Simple answer is there is nothing to add to the to the answer by the most influential USTR. But I would like to say, this is a very, very delicately balanced agreement. So it's almost impossible to take a part of that package and to change it. It will not be acceptable for the other 11 member countries. So in that sense, I don't know how this administration and the U.S. Congress will be able to make a compromise between them.
It's hard. Okay.
Okay, additional questions? There's a mic here and a mic up here.
Don't be bashful.
Hands in the air. Yes, Emmy.
Thank you. In one of your slides, you showed that there would be some that will be disadvantaged by the agreement, any agreement, and you talked about transferring benefits to those groups. So can you give some examples of how the Japanese government identified the groups that would be disadvantaged and what kind of transfer of benefits took place or would take place in this case.
今回この TPP によって不利な立場になる方に対して政府が行われている方、スライドがありましたけれども、その中の何か事例サンプルをお話しいただけますでしょうか。
じゃあ
どちらでもどちらでも。
例えば日本の農業の場合、農産物の輸入急増によって影響を受けると、そういうような社に対してですね、ある程度の対抗力、競争力を増すためにサポートをするということは取ろうとしています。ただそれはあまり大きなものではないと承知はしています。
So let me take an example in agriculture. So those who produce the agricultural products, they may be negatively affected by if the agricultural import has increased. So the government is trying to support those people involved in agriculture to help them improve their competitiveness. Although I would say the size of or scale of the support may not be that huge, but that's what we're trying to do.
それから日本、JETROがまさにやってることですけれども、その日本の農業がもっと輸出市場に目を向ける、そういう作業をしています。で、そのためのサポートをしています。
Also, JETRO is supporting those farmers shift their focus to more to the import, so that they can import their product. Excuse me, export.
Export market.
I think Dr. Yeutter has an addition, but you must have good instinct, Chairman. As an agricultural economist, just ask you that question. Yes, Secretary.
Well, I thought I might comment from the U.S. standpoint because there are losers in every trade agreement. It would be nice if you could have a trade agreement in which everybody wins in all countries, but that's just not the real world works. What happens, of course, which makes this politically challenging, is that losers make a lot of noise. And that's understandable. If I were losing my job as a result of a trade agreement, or at least thought I was going to lose it, I would be fussing a great deal. So people in Washington, D.C. or in Tokyo hear from the folks whose jobs may be in jeopardy. Now, we have programs here in the U.S., as you well know, to help those who are disadvantaged by trade, and that's really what one has to do. And we have to recognize that there are way more winners than losers in trade. I don't know of a single trade agreement that I have been involved in over the last 20 or 25 years that didn't have a lot more winners than losers. So we have to enjoy the winnings and try to be as helpful as we can to the losers, but fully understanding that for every loser, if you will, in that process, there are going to be many, many more winners, and overall a trade agreement is going to be in the best interest of the U.S., and it's going to be in the best interest of the other countries, including Japan, or you don't have a trade agreement. What a lot of people fail to understand when negotiations are underway is that what emerges has to be mutually beneficial. If it's a U.S.-Japan agreement, we better find a way for that to be beneficial, a net positive in Japan as well as a net positive in the U.S., or there likely is not going to be an agreement.
Additional comment. 貿易だけでなくてですね、技術的な変化、そういうものによって勤労者というか労働者は、自分のスキルを変えていかなくてはいけないということがあると思います。だから正解は自分のスキルを変えていく、変化に応じて変えていく、そういうことを政府がサポートする、そういうことが重要だと思います。
So let me add one more comment. So we should not only look at the trade, but also we should need advancement or change in technologies in the world. So I think the laborers or the laborers need to improve or change their skills according to the time and change. So the government's role is to help those laborers to accommodate the change in technologies.
Okay, do we have another question, right? No? Oh, okay. Director Abba.
So we understand that agriculture is one of the big winners in the U.S. from the TPP. And if we, Secretary Yeutter, maybe this one is especially for you, but if we look down the road and we fail to take advantage of this opportunity to bring a win home for agriculture and trade, where does that put us competitively in the world down the road?
Okay, Ishige-san, want to comment? You want me to comment? Okay. Well, yes, agriculture is one of the winners, not only vis-a-vis Japan in TPP. We're going to have some excellent market opportunities, as Chairman Ishige-san reflected in his remarks, beef being one of the major winners in this process. But there are others as well. It would be nonsensical for us not to take advantage of that opportunity, and some other good opportunities for American agriculture in TPP countries too. Vietnam is, as an example, is a growing potential market. That country is experiencing an excellent growth rate, and they have to import. But that whole Asian region is just going to explode over the next 20 or 25 years. And it would be a gigantic mistake if the U.S. didn't lead the way. And we've got to lead the way in TPP. That's what's on the table. There isn't anything else on the table, except, as Chairman Ishige points out, the agreement that China wishes to lead. If we don't lead it, China will. So we either need to step up and provide trade leadership in that part of the world, or we're going to step down big time.
I think we have entered the age of competition among the trade liberalization initiatives, TPP, RCEP, Japan, EU, FTA, TTIP. So those initiatives are competing with each other. Those try to provide better business environment. So in the case of RCEP, I said the level would not be so high in comparison with that of TPP. But still, the member countries try to provide a better business environment so that they can attract the foreign companies, they can attract the investment by the companies. That is a situation.
I need to add one point to that that's really a very important one as we look into the future. If we approve TPP and everybody else does, as I certainly hope will be the case, the U.S. will lead the development of rules for the conduct of international trade throughout all of Asia and basically throughout the world. That's really important, and this goes back to Ishige-san's speech where he pointed out that there are already a whole host of countries, additional countries who want to join TPP. They've already lined up. Indonesia, Taiwan, Korea, and others. That's really important because you had a whole bunch of additional new markets for U.S. exporters. And if TPP is ratified, they're going to come into TPP. A lot of them will never join RCEP, the other agreement. But more importantly, in my view, the second tranche of TPP will be the countries that Ishige-san mentioned, And the third tranche of TPP will be China. China will join TPP and be a part of this and be obligated to follow TPP rules instead of following its own rules and having everybody following along behind China. And if you don't think that's important in terms of the conduct of international trade over the next 50 years, man, oh man, that's where the action is.
On that note, we will close our discussion, invite you to a reception up above us for a chance to visit with our visitors from Japan and with Dr. Yeutter. Please join me in giving a round of applause to Chairman Ishige-san for a wonderful keynote.